Hello, listeners. Get ready for an informative episode today as I welcome Ian Tenenbaum to the podcast to share with us his perspective on ADHD and productivity and the work that he does. And especially for those of us as writers who are maybe feeling that we have some ADHD tendencies or possibly undiagnosed, or maybe you are diagnosed and wanting to learn more about how you can navigate your ADHD and your everyday writing schedule. So welcome, Ian.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about some of the strategies that maybe for those of us who are feeling overwhelmed in our daily lives and trying to figure out how to get started writing, things that are getting in the way. How can we get past those feelings of overwhelm and get to the work that we want to be doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, I'm not a writer in the sense personally as my career, but I do a lot of creative work, like writing for social media or putting together workshops. So, I know all too well that feeling of, analysis paralysis and feeling stuck. Or what happens for a lot of us with ADHD is we're highly creative, we're innovative, we're storytellers, we're highly imaginative. And then what happens is our overactive imagination starts coming up with so many different things we want to do, so many different ideas that it kind of clogs the system. I, with my clients, love the analogy of kids leaving a classroom for lunch. And if all the kids rush to the door at the same time, no one's getting out the door and no one's getting to lunch, right? So the kids are like our ideas and our things we want to do, our projects. And what we get stuck in is they all rush out at the same time and then they get stuck. And then we feel frustrated and like the kids that are stuck now, they're not going to have lunch. Now they're scared. Now they're hungry. It just builds. And what we have to do is kind of train ourselves and these, the kids in our mind, that even the last kid at the end of the line is still going to get to lunch, is still going to eat. There's going to be plenty of food. But if they don't line up in order and slow down and go one at a time, no one's getting out, right? So the way this looks for us a lot is practicing these self-regulation skills that it all starts with a few steps back before we want to start. So you asked about starting and, maybe getting into the writing or about to work on a project. And we have to transition from, as simple as it sounds, not working on something to
Mhm.
then working on it, right? So imagine it's a switch. You're either not working on it or you are, right? And getting that switch to flip can be very hard, right? Or getting the kids out of the classroom is very hard, right? Everything gets stuck. So the first thing we need to do is really like calm ourselves down. And then I developed in my coaching kind of an operating system that helps us go through the process from having all these ideas and overwhelm to slowly calming ourselves down. Then the best thing I recommend starting with is getting things out of our head. So even though we're not necessarily starting writing the project or writing the work or writing my post, what I can do is grab a pen and paper and just start writing down all the ideas that are kind of clogging me. And that combined with self-regulation starts to calm us down. And then when we see something outside of our brain on paper, we can start going to step two, which is let's organize things a bit, right? So I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. I have this idea. We calm it down and then we look at it and then we can see where do I want to start? What's the best place to kind of pick an entry point? And then from there, we can have a lot of that noise quiet, and then we could pick a place to start, and then we can ease into it. And I have some other steps, but the short answer is it all starts with calming our nervous system down and then just gradually finding ways to kind of like, move into it slowly, step by step. Right.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes there are people in writing communities who recommend, taking yourself for a walk if you're, feeling stuck. Is that also a strategy that helps with calming the nervous system, or is it better to start by just letting everything out on paper?
Well, yeah, I think you're touching on something that's interesting. So there could be a few different reasons why we feel stuck. It could be that we are having trouble getting the gears moving. So we might have no thoughts and we are having a blank, right? And it could be I'm sitting down, I want to write a LinkedIn post, and I sit down, and it's not the kids rushing out of the classroom. It's like the teacher, like, where'd all the kids go? And it's totally blank, right? So in that context, yeah, it would be very helpful to go for a walk, get your body moving, get some of that kind of adrenaline and some of your energy and serotonin going, and then start, seeing like what ideas pop in. Um, but then, yeah, on the flip side, contrary, I think if we are overwhelmed, whatever works for individuals to calm, some people find a lot of calm by going for a walk. And on the walk, they let all those thoughts just kind of marinate.
Yeah.
So the short answer is yes, a walk can be fantastic, and it could probably serve a couple different purposes depending on the specific circumstances.
And so, what are some other steps? Let's say you have everything's down on paper and you're starting to organize, but then you're still in a space where you're feeling like you're not sure where to start. That even though you've gotten because I think about, for me, I love, pre-writing, getting everything down, but then sometimes there's still that feeling of I still am not sure where to start. It still feels like there's a lot going on. What would you recommend in that situation for a writer?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things that I love, and it's probably the most fitting analogy with writers, is the idea of repetition and and thinking through the lens of everything being a first draft. So I use the terminology with my clients, first draft, and we're referring to business, projects, emails. But even more fitting for a writer, when you think in terms of a first draft or just an outline, right? It lowers the barrier and the pressure that we put on ourselves. So a lot of what's happening is when we're getting overwhelmed, flustered, I just don't know where to start. That's all an internal dialogue. That's not a real physical thing. That's just a thought pattern that we're getting stuck in, right? So there is no one singular place to start or best place or the right place typically, especially in a creative process like writing. So what we need to do is just disrupt that, thought pattern that's getting us stuck.
Mhm.
And one of the best ways to do it is just really dramatically lower the barrier and say, I'm just going to put it down and I'm just going to start with an outline, which I could then move around. Or I have an outline and I'm ready to start on chapter 1. I'm just going to start writing a draft. I don't know what's going to happen. I might throw it out completely. But the biggest thing we're trying to do, whether it's the self-regulation, the going for a walk, we're trying to transition from not doing it to doing it. And it's like, it sounds so simple to a lot of people, but for us with ADHD, it can be the bane of our existence. Like, I don't think a lot of people without ADHD could fully appreciate how difficult it is for us to go from not doing something we want to do to doing the thing we want to do. And that's just one of our big challenges that people don't understand. Well, you know what to do. You said you want to, just do it. That's like nails on a chalkboard for us with ADHD. Just do it. People say, oh, well, you know what to do. You know how to do it. Just go do it. We want to I guess I don't have any hair. We want to pull our hair out. We're like, if it was that easy, don't you think I would be doing it? And the reason
That
why
sounds
it
so
becomes,
familiar. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it
I was just gonna
becomes
say
so
that's. I
frustrating.
mean, that sounds so familiar.
You were saying?
Go ahead. Sorry. No, I was just gonna
I was
say
just going to
that
say,
sounds so familiar to me.
yeah, it's frustrating because we're often highly intelligent, very smart, and people just can't understand how you know how to do something. You clearly could do it well. You've done it well, and then you're now struggling to do it. It's like something doesn't make sense in their mind, and they just start creating stories of it must be because you don't want to. It must be because you're lazy. It must be because you're procrastinating. It must be because, and they don't. And this is why I like the work I'm doing, and it's bringing attention and light to the fact that it's more difficult for us to do these things than for other people, and it is really it's pervasive, and it's perpetual, and it's frustrating. Luckily, with the work with I do with my clients and for myself, I know that over time, by practicing muscles and skills that we never learned, we can improve these things. But it's still something I still struggle with on a weekly basis in a lot of ways, and have to keep working on it a lot more than I think a lot of other people do.
Do you find that you have to kind of give yourself a daily mantra of some kind, or little reminders to say, like, I know, these are the steps to take, or, do you have Post-its up that say, okay, if this happens, like, these are steps for me to take, kind of visuals to remind yourself that you can get there, but do you just have to remember that you have to slow down and take yourself through a
Yeah,
few
so
steps?
one of the big steps in my productivity system is making things visual. So I have a whiteboard here, and one of the things is intuition, and it says trust yourself, because we question ourselves daily to a point that's definitely counterproductive. Should I? Should I? Should I? Should I? Is it? And we don't trust ourselves. Other people say, you know what to do. And it's like, I know, but, and then we start getting into storytelling, right? Another one says, stay the course. So I want to change. I want to do something different. And it's a reminder, keep doing what you're doing. And then another one is calm your mind. So whether it's looking over and seeing the intuition and trust yourself, calm your mind, they're all visual reminders that I can just look at quickly when I start trying to do something different, questioning myself. And in the house, I have another whiteboard that says small steps build up over time. And it's by the kitchen. And I write little quotes like that. So it's a huge part of what works well for us, and what we need to be doing is finding ways to keep reinforcing these positive mantras and messages that override the lifetime of negative messages that are running on auto play.
And do you find it's helpful in the work that you do to, to share with people right away that, about, ADHD and ways that, you're navigating it? Or, I mean, what are some common things that you see with your clients of, what they struggle with the most when it comes to getting something done?
Yeah, I mean, the questioning ourselves is a huge one. We go through life often oscillating between being impulsive or being stuck in analysis and paralysis and procrastination. And there's this interesting paradox where we have trouble modulating the middle ground. So we're either all in, hyper focused, obsessive to the 10, 11, 12, or we're pulling back, we're questioning ourselves, we're doubting ourselves, we're insecure, we're procrastinating, we're avoiding, we're having anxiety. And then we eventually get sick of that and build up enough momentum to slingshot us back to impulsive, erratic, you know, not really very thoughtful. And then that starts to look like it's getting us in trouble. So we now question everything we do. And this switch is broken. If someone's listening, I'm kind of waving my hand back and
Yeah.
forth. It's something that I've learned, and I'm learning with kids now. We're addressing it, but our generation never got this help as kids. So we have to develop these skills and these muscles, emotional regulation, and these positive self-talk messages, self-compassion. So a lot of my clients struggle tremendously from day one with beating ourselves up and shame. And I know I should, and I always struggle too, and I can never. And that is almost like a train that has so much momentum and inertia that it's moving on its own. And gradually, I think I've been doing this work on myself for like 6 years, 7 years, starting around when I was 37, 38, and I'm seeing now a dramatic shift, but it's definitely slow moving. So the big thing is learning a little at a time and then implementing, and then practicing a little more and then implementing, and then accepting that there isn't some silver bullet. There isn't some new system. There isn't some new, app. There isn't going to be some new workbook. There isn't going to be some new diary. There isn't going to, there, we're always looking for this quick fix that's going to solve all our
Mhm.
problems. And for me, what's been the most helpful is the more I learn about ADHD and the reality and what's going on, the more I can accept it and say, oh, okay, this is biological and it's never changed. It's always going to be part of who I am. Like I have contacts. Unless I get LASIK, I need contacts or glasses. Right.
Right.
So we don't have LASIK for ADHD brain yet. So these are things that I can embrace and learn to practice. I figure it out. Why won't someone come like solve to, oh, okay, I'm understanding, this makes sense. Okay, I get why.
Mm.
Then we can slowly start building new muscles and new habits and new skills.
Well, I love what you say about using the word embrace and, just and accepting where you are and creating this understanding around what's going on. Because I think about how often, the whole idea where people do put themselves down when they think like, oh, well, it's because I have ADHD, and it always is unfortunately put in a negative, tone. And I was a classroom teacher for a long time, so I'm familiar with, all of the negativity that comes along with it, unfortunately, with kids. And so, I mean, it's definitely something that it sounds like with the work you're doing, you're changing that narrative for people, which, and when I think about writers, there's already naturally a sense to want to break yourself down if you're feeling like you're not getting the right words on the page, or you're not getting enough words written in a day. And there always seems to be all this pressure. And what I'm hearing from you is this sense of when you come to understand how this impacts you, you can take steps to change that for yourself, and the idea of a practice over time, that it's not going to be a quick fix, but when you embrace that aspect of your identity, that it can make big changes for you. So I think I mean, that's really cool to think about. And I know when we talked before, we had talked about, when is it ADHD and when is it anxiety? Like, what is the difference there? Because I know some people feel anxious and maybe they think, in thinking about this, that's oh no, it's not ADHD, it's anxiety. At what point is there the differentiation between those two?
Yeah, so I make it very clear that I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a licensed doctor, and everything I share is based on personal experience or things that I've observed or learned from doctors and experts. And my understanding is that there's a lot of, comorbidity between ADHD and anxiety. There's a lot of overlap. So a lot of us with ADHD will have anxiety in different ways. They're definitely separate, but there's a lot of overlap. And I've found a lot of success working with my own therapist and psychiatrist over years to kind of flush out what are the things I'm struggling with on a daily basis that are a root cause anxiety, what are ADHD, what are things that I could do strategies for, what are things I need therapy for, what are things I need medication for? Oh, I'm learning this. So there's a lot of overlap. It's a more complicated answer. I think anecdotally, my wife told me that she had many years of living with the idea that everything was anxiety related. And then at like 31 years old, went, finally got diagnosed with ADHD and found out that all of these years, a lot of what she was struggling with was actually ADHD related more than the anxiety. And I'm hearing that's common in women more than men. A lot of my clients have mentioned it too, where they always thought they just had anxiety. They always thought their challenges were largely anxiety related. And then they found out at a
Mhm.
later age it's ADHD as well. So again, the short answer is I encourage everyone to be meeting with a therapist, psychiatrist, and trying to understand what's really going on. So that's where you can then start to get the right support when you have a better sense of what's really going on biologically and in the brain.
No, that's a great recommendation for our community, and it's always good, of course, to get any kind of, professional help that you need. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience that maybe we haven't touched upon yet?
No, but just to elaborate on what we just said, I think taking it full circle, initially we were talking about what is challenging for people to get started when we get stuck. And when we have ADHD, the loop of having a highly creative mind, we come up with so many ideas, and that does cause a lot of anxiety for us because we're trying to sift through this overwhelm of thoughts. And that does trigger anxiety in us, which is why, a lot of the work I do starts with that self regulation and emotional regulation. So it really comes down to practicing that muscle of calming our nervous system. When I work with clients who have overactive anxiety, that work is very challenging. So then I refer, hey, go meet with a therapist or a psychiatrist. It sounds like there's a higher level of anxiety at play, but there's a lot of ways they're interconnected. So nothing else I would add. I think anybody who's looking for help or curious, definitely reach out to me. I run a community of highly successful professionals and entrepreneurs with ADHD. I work privately and then also in a group setting, and we have a community that's very supportive. So anyone who's curious, reach out to me and I'd love to talk to you.
And where can they find this information? Where can they find you online?
So either on LinkedIn, just Ian Tenenbaum, And my website is accountable.live. The business is called Accountable because we hold each other accountable.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Ian. This was a great conversation. And listeners, I hope you enjoy, and definitely, check out Ian's resources online and reach out to him if you're interested in connecting and learning more.